Hello everyone and welcome to Australia Build Week Online 2020. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. Whether you're an attendee, speaker, partner or sponsor, without you the event couldn't happen. So thank you very much for being here. On behalf of Oliver Kinross, I'd like to personally welcome you to the event that is running from the 7th to the 11th of December, all online. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank all of our sponsors for supporting us and making the event what it is. Before I introduce our speakers, just a reminder that if you have any questions for the speakers, you can submit them in the box on the right hand of your screen. If we do run out of time for questions, we'll send any unanswered ones to the speakers to answer after their session. Now, I'd like to hand you over to the speakers who will get started straight away. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the event. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy the event.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Australian Build Week session, empowering a distributed workforce through paperless sites. My name is Luke Simmons and I'll be the moderator for this session. I work in the Dropbox construction team here in Australia and New Zealand. I'm humbled today to be joined by our panelists. I'd like them to start off by introducing themselves. So Doug, let's start with you. Could you tell us a bit about yourself and also ADCO and the company you're representing today?
Thanks, Luke. My name's Douglas Zuzic. I'm the CIO at ADCO Constructions. We're a national construction business operating out of 4 states, almost a 50-year-old commercial construction organisation. And I head up all the IT systems, the technology, the innovation space here at ADCO. Thanks.
Excellent. Tom, take it away. Can't hear you, Tom.
That's all right. I might jump in then, keep things moving.
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah, it's Alan Riesenweber, practice director at GHD Digital. I've been working in ICT space for about 20 odd years, and 2.5 years now with GHD, large engineering services firm. 90 years old here in Australia and also a global presence. And I'm really there to sort of help our clients better leverage the data and their investment in data across spatial and the asset space, and how we can do more with what they've got.
Excellent. Should we go to Peter?
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Peter Yavari. I'm the 4D lead and one of the planners at CPB Contractors. I think my company is mentioned wrong as GHD down there. So I work with CPB Contractors. It's the largest infrastructure company in Australia, basically working on road, rail, and other infrastructure jobs. So my background has always been in delivery part of the construction works. I've never worked in design. However, I worked on both sides of the fence in regards to working in the planning and delivery phase, and also in digital engineering, but again, as part of the construction team. Yep, that pretty much wraps it up for me.
Excellent. Tom, have we got you back, or Paul, do you want to jump in?
I hope so. I hope so.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Right.
Yep. Oh, wonderful. Yep. Tom Dijkgraaf, Innovation and Strategy Leader with GHD Digital. As one can imagine, I'm trying to leading a lot of innovation with our clients, partners, and seeing how we can apply digital as a strategy and embed that within all of their activities, and also within GHD themselves. So a long history with digital transformation for almost 20 years across large enterprises. So yeah, keen to discuss the opportunity it has for the built environment industry.
Excellent. Go for it, Paul.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. So Paul Francis, APAC Regional Solutions for Digital Solutions. So for us, the digital solutions area spans horizontally across all of the sectors that Jacobs operates in, from transport, water, power, built environment, and so on. The idea really is that in addition to sort of the digital delivery and digital engineering part, we'll build upon that deep domain expertise and knowledge to bring new, innovative, disruptive in some respects, digital capabilities and offerings to help our clients solve some of their most wicked challenges, as we like to put it.
Excellent. Thanks, Paul, and thanks to all our panelists. I think we will be talking about some of those wicked challenges today. So at Dropbox, we've been working with the construction organisations for over the last 10 years. We've helped many companies, including ADCO, leverage the benefits of this technology. At the same time, we do pride ourselves on creating a way of working that even the least tech-savvy builder can wrap their head around. So at Dropbox, our mission is actually to create a more enlightened way of working. With everything that's happened in 2020, I'm sure you'd agree, this has become more important than ever. We're here today to talk about empowering this distributed workforce, whether that be across multiple job sites, multiple cities, whether your team's dispersed across the country, and it's about giving your people the tools to do their very best work. So today we'll be discussing this move to paperless sites. We'll touch on areas such as culture, flexibility, intuitiveness of the technology that we're all rolling out, and ensure that decisions we're making are always sustainable and built for growth. So let's kick off with our questions. I'd like to start with our first question of the session and get Doug to take it away. So Doug, and for all our panelists in order, how do you empower your distributed workforce to do their best work?
Thanks for that, Luke. I think for ADCO, that's very relevant because we are a national business. You know, we're operating approximately 50 job sites across the country, and it's even more relevant now than ever, particularly with a lot of people working from home as well. So we've never been as distributed as what we are now. I think for people to be able to do their best work, I think it's about looking for ways to free up time for our employees and our supply chain to focus on the things that are important. And for us, an obvious one's always been just around the removing the duplication or doing the same thing over and over again. And an obvious one for us was around information being re-entered into systems multiple times. And for us, it was about establishing a single data source, which we found really relevant, particularly at a national level, which removed a lot of duplication. It improved our reporting, integrity of reporting, access to information, particularly at a national level. That was something that helped us empower our distributed workforce. And it also, particularly with construction, you find that there's a lot of silos, and the silos can be at a project level, they can be at a state level. And to break down those silos, I think that technology in particular can be extremely beneficial in that space. Another one, just providing the employees and also our supply chain. So our supply chain being our subcontractors. It's just important that they can work anywhere. It doesn't matter where they are, whether they're overseas or domestically here in Australia. And intuitiveness, like you touched on, and being able to work on any device, on any system. So for us, that cloud first was something that was important for us, and also something that's secure, obviously, reliable and scalable. Another one, probably the last couple of years, we've introduced a lot of collaboration platforms within the business, and that's something that we've found has worked really well, particularly with trending and picking up on historical data compared to current data, and at a reporting level from, you know, a project level, a state level, and a national level. So they're probably just some things that we've introduced. Definitely breaking down those silos, reducing the need to re-enter the same information over and over again, having that single source of truth. It helped us become a bit more scalable, a bit more efficient, establish standards across our jobs. And there are probably a couple of responses there, Luke.
Yep, excellent, thank you. Tom?
Thanks, Luke. I'm hearing a lot of themes that I think resonate from Doug and for ourselves as well. I think what it meant, particularly in taking recent events in consideration, I think we had a solid strategy already in place to anticipate a distributed workforce. We planned quite far ahead already for some years to see how we can enable a distributed workforce. But when it came to this year's events, we were ready to go, and within a week's of time, we enabled our entire workforce to work distributedly. I'm talking about 10,000 sort of employees globally. to work on a single distributed platform. And that does goes with its challenges. We've had engineers that have never, left the office and had to work with their tools from home and had to collaborate on engineering projects like they've never done before. So I think listening to Doug, it's that common platform. And one of the barriers is, of course, is communication. So how do you facilitate that level of communication between all your team members and make sure that it's not disrupted in any way? Do they have the right tools to continuously do that job? As with cloud platforms, there's a lot of those tools are available. What is the right tool? What do you use? And what is really, is it personal enough? Does it work for every engineer? Does it work for every executive manager? Is it secure enough? Is it responsive enough? So all those elements and challenges came really down to listening to the challenges that the people faced. And I think that was one of the most powerful elements that we've experienced. It's listening and responding with adequate timeframes and tools to help our staff out. And that came down to our partners as well, and our clients in the field. It's been an incredible journey. I think the partners that we've had for a long time, like Doug, we've had just a number of tools within the business, but we consolidated on one or two tools there. Simplicity of tools, consistency allows for all of those things to happen for us. And so far, it's been an incredible experience for us within the business, and it has set us up for a future of distributed working like we never thought before, to be honest, and it's put us years ahead of where we are now.
Excellent.
Thanks, Luke.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ton. And hearing about collaboration and couldn't agree more. That's being a big tool around empowering the workforce. Some other areas, I suppose, we've been looking at is how do we remove the roadblocks through technology, but again, not making technology the roadblock itself, because sometimes that can be the case. So really, with the team being more distributed than they were before, we haven't got people in the office. That might be walking to each other's desk and handing bits of paper around, or having those conversations. So through the tools, looking at very simple tools to use, and we've had to sort of redevelop and deploy some tools that weren't there before. Fit for purpose has been very important. Understanding the workflows and all the various sort of people we've got out in the field, whether it be engineering, environmental teams, or people in the transport business. How are they doing their jobs? What are they doing, and how we can provide those technologies. And I'll talk a little bit later about some of the technologies we've helped with removing the paper out of the system, which has been sort of key, and getting them not necessarily out of the field all the time. And I think being portable as well. We've not always had the number of devices we might have had before, so we've had to be able to make those portable to work on every individual's device, and that might be the BYOD. What things do they have that has to work on any number of type of devices? So I think the empowerment from our perspective has been giving the right tools for the right job, and making sure that they're reliable, they work. Cloud first is important. We have a lot of most of our people working out in remote areas where they don't have communication, so the solutions have to work offline and be able to sync back up when those comms are available. So that's that's being important. They don't want to be going out there and finding out that device doesn't work and then they're going back to paper. It has to work in all conditions. Thanks.
Over, Peter. Thanks, Alan.
All right. Yeah, I think everyone has pretty much summed it up. There is not too much left to cover here, but I will just emphasize further that it pretty much is boiled down to choosing the right tool that people are more comfortable and can pick up faster and quicker. So it's been the case. So probably some part of the difference for me is that working for a builder is a bit different than from the designer side. So for some sort of activities that are more like site related, we still obviously have that side still there, but for the people working from the head office or project office, yes, there has been some changes, and there has been some focus on trying to get people to use the different software packages and CDs that we have been trying to encourage people to use, but this COVID thing has been a good opportunity that pretty much set it out to be used more broadly, and it was more like the necessity that pushed it further forward. Yeah, I think that pretty much that choosing the right software and having the proper training for people that they can catch up would be the key for us.
Excellent. Thanks, Peter. And Paul, anything to add?
A little bit. I mean, much, as everyone else has experienced, we've all had the forcing event, which for us was 50-odd thousand people in a short space of time, having to really accelerate the move to distribution. I think the people have touched on the technology components and unencumbering people from the point of view of being connected and having storage, and access to patching and IT updates and all of that sort of thing. I think the key word there perhaps is empower, and as much of the cultural empowerment or people feeling comfortable and safe enough that they can do their work wherever. So moving away from having to see somebody literally in the office to understanding that work can be done with the right tools, right connections, and so on. In a lot of cases, in any location. So there's a big cultural shift that's had to happen as well to be able to do that as quickly as that move has happened. One other thing I think just want to mention, we've been looking at, particularly in places like Singapore, the use of wearables, sensors, and other levels of automation just to help people just unencumber them from either the paper or even having to interact in a digital sense, because it happens automatically, and that could be sensing everything from the temperature in this case as they come on site, to whether they're wearing PPE or have the right qualifications to be on site, and so on. So we're trying to look at ways to actually do that in a more automated fashion as well.
Yeah, excellent. No, that was great. I think everything from removing duplication through to this rapid acceleration of change is definitely coming to the fore in terms of the answers that our panelists have given there, and certainly an increased level of flexibility as well. So if we're looking, one thing that's come up today is paperless sites. So Ton, we'll start with you. So in terms of, how does the paperless work site, what does it mean to you? How do you define it? Can you give us some thoughts on that?
Yes, thanks, Luke. I think it's good to reflect on why we will want a paperless site in the first place. I think it's highly underestimated how much time we actually wasted on the work site in managing reports, the documenting regulatory requirements, safety reports, etc., etc. And not only that, it's multiple organizations, multiple groups that all have to play nicely together. There is really one single entity that is managing a particular construction site or project in that place. And key to all of that, I think, is what happens if you have compliance issues. How do you track that? How do you manage that? How do you do the variations? And that all implies back to cost and safety in the end. So I think those are all pretty critical drivers as to why you would want a paperless site to begin with. One of the key things that we've found as well is well documented is variations, right? Every site, you go on site, it wasn't quite what you had in mind. So or the owner says actually not quite what I'm looking for. So we're going to the variation cycle. The variation drives cost, drives delivery timelines and whatnot. So you need fast approvals, clarity, transparency, and all of those matters. And I think that's where, as Paul was already alluding to, with sensors, we can collect, or people on site can collect a whole heap of information while they're on site. We now have phones with LiDAR sensors that can capture the environment that we can integrate into the documentation. We can have fast approvals rather than having long documented processes and observations. We can have shorter observations with faster approval processes and transparency that we can move forward on. And that all for me, it's safety, not just safety in building the site, keeping your people safe. It's what we've seen in Sydney, for example, a few times now is there's an issue with the building over a number of years where We're not entirely sure what the cause is, and we have no way of tracing back what happened when. Digital transformation flows and removing paper workflows from the building site is just key in managing our safety of the built environment going forward. So the potential is not enormous. It drives compliance and safety for our community. So I think it's a clear winner for everyone.
Yeah, excellent. And Peter, anything to add to that from GHD's experience?
Yeah, sure. So again, I am with CPB. There are 2 points that going paperless that to me is probably the most important parts about it. Disregarding the sustainability side of it and the environmental side of going paperless, the main benefit to me, I think it comes down to the efficiency. So it's very scary when we go to, say, site office and we see there are some drawings laid down on the desks and the engineers are using off or doing works off those printed out of PDF or whatever the original file type was. And it might be sitting on their desks for a few weeks by the time that they go for the next variation. Whereas considering the changes that might happen during the design during that period, there might be a few variations that they are missing out. So the thing with paper is that you cannot really control the versions or how often people are updating them. So it's not only the design, like I'm a planner, if I see a printout of a program or a Gantt chart sitting on an engineer or project manager's desk, the first question that comes to my mind is that how old is that program? We are not going version 1, version 2, version 3A or whatever. It's a live updating program and a live updating design that probably is being updated on a fortnightly basis. So making sure that everyone is working off the latest and greatest design and program and whatever information and data that we have is super critical to avoid mistakes and to avoid reworks. That is one most critical part for me looking at going paperless, that people would be working on the live document or as late as possible live documents rather than going on the printouts. And the other one would be data management, as Tom mentioned. When you've got the paper, and again, I pretty much most of the things I wanted to cover was covered by Tom here, and it goes to safety. When you've got your like incident reports or whatever information you are recording on paper, then there is quite a bit of workflow of documenting all of that and using them further down the track and going back and making sure they are rectified and the changes are implemented. So that's, for me, is first efficiency, second data management, which again sits under efficiency as well. And the environmental part is not on the top of my list. That's pretty much.
Yeah. No, that's great feedback. Thanks, Peter. And I think for us, look at Dropbox, one of the main reasons we are so successful is that people have access to that latest version of the file, and it's saved many construction site many a time. Let's move on, I guess, coloring that in a little bit. So, Alan, I'll go to you. In terms of enabling the site, how do you measure success of the ability to go paperless? Can you start us off there, and maybe Doug lead in after Alan, if you like?
Yeah, thanks, Luke. I think for us, it's probably understanding the workflow that we're talking about. You know, Tom was talking about before. You know, where in the process is the paper? You know, the paper we want to remove, and is that a manual process? And there's a couple of ways to consider around that. It's you know, is it around the individual manual thing that we need to be looking at changing, and that's done through, you know, right now we've a number of different apps and ways to capture data in the field. You know, we've done a lot of surveys across our team, and we've still got lots of people using paper, and part of the reason why they use paper is because the solutions that they want to get the data into at the end of the day doesn't have any way to do that. So when we start to understand the process, is it around, you know, finding a digital solution to do that? And we're trying to remove the the paper and with a piece of technology, or the other instance, are we actually trying to look at maybe, you know, replace that person going into the field by some sort of device, and is there other ways to do that? So, you know, we really look at, you know, people going in the field capturing a number of things around, you know, spatial awareness. Where are they? The video, the images, and what they can do with that, and really measuring that around productivity. You know, having to send people out in the field twice costs us a lot of money. So you only want to go there once and capture the right information and make that available. And we're even seeing that now, bringing AI into the mix, where if you're going out there and taking photos, it's not about then taking that back to the office, making a decision using the AI to look at corrosion detection, any number of things. So you're not having to go back out there twice. You might be able to action, you know, the problem there and then without having to go back. Wearables was mentioned. We're doing a lot of work where we're, you know, especially with COVID, where we won't be able to deploy the right skilled resource to the location, using real-wear headsets for having people in other locations that could be, you know, talk through and how to do that analysis. So rather than having a junior fill out paperwork and not capturing it correctly, being able to do that through, you know, VR and AR type solutions in the headsets. And then if we are trying to look at where we might be able to remove even people, rather than people writing on paper and writing on a tablet, how do we use other types of technologies, video analytics? We're doing stuff around drones at the moment, around measuring on cooling towers thickness of paint, where typically we'd send somebody up on a ladder, they'd measure the paint thickness looking for corrosion. You send the drone up with a probe, it does the measurement. That data is already captured, so someone's not filling it out. And again, helping with that real-time decision making, which is pretty key. And we're seeing that in a number of places, even with AIT devices, especially in water. You know, not having people to go out and you know, look at temperatures within, you know, ponds or things like that, and the remote sensing elements, where we're actually using more satellite imagery rather than even people going out and having to capture that. So back to my first point, understanding the workflow. What are we trying to, where is the bit of the paper that we're trying to solve? Again, as a piece of technology, would we still have somebody go out, or do we try and take that person out of the equation? Helps with safety, and we're really starting to measure the productivity. You know, can things happen quicker? Can decisions be made better? And can we not have to send people out in unsafe environments as well? Is probably pretty key.
Yeah, excellent, Alan. Thank you. Doug, how about from your experience?
Thanks, Luke. I guess indicators, or how do we measure success based on enabling paperless work sites? First one's probably just around the people first culture, which is what we push for at ADCO, is just their feedback. And for us, it's not just our internal employees, but also subcontractors or trade partners, our clients, our project managers, architects. So we're dealing with a lot of different people, and it's basically feedback in terms of what's working well and what's not working well. And that's where we can pick up on a lot of these frustrations and duplication. The other one's the quality of information to assist with decision making. So it's that data capture element. As we're transitioning from a legacy process into a digital process, we're picking up on that data capture gain, and through that we're able to report a lot better, and particularly across multiple projects. So some examples, a good example would be from a safety point of view, if we noticed a spike in injuries, we could intervene a lot quicker. And that might be across a particular sector, it might be in a particular location. So that was something that we weren't able to do previously, but as we've moved across into a digital workflow, we're able to pick up on that benefit. Another example is just around things like subcontractor ratings, which can assist with procurement on future projects. Sustainability is a big driver for us, particularly with moving from legacy to digital. We've reduced our environmental footprint massively in that space. From an actual measure, we've reduced our print 21% in the last 12 months. And a lot of that we have put down to enabling paperless work sites. So, and that measure there's benefits in that, not only from a cost point of view, but also archiving all the hard copies from when we do have a paper heavy site, we're having to archive them and send them off and having to get them retrieved and so forth. So accessing that information, the archiving piece, the 21% reduction in print across all our job sites nationally is pretty substantial for us. there's an improvement from a sustainability point of view. And like I said, the feedback from our people, not only our internal employees, but also supply chain and that data capture, that data management, that data reporting, not just on one project, but across sectors, across multiple jobs and trends, you know, this year versus last year type things. So, yeah, there's a few measures there, Luke, but and we're starting to see the benefits of those.
Thanks, Doug and Alan. That was great. I mean, it's great to see you leaning in and giving us some actual, you know, some stats and really painting that picture of what you've achieved this year. Paul, I'm going to come to you. I know you've been waiting to say something further, and really that the final question that we've got before I go to the audience is around what does the future look like? Probably the hardest question we've got today. What does the future look like? We first said it was going to be in a post-COVID world. The reality is 2021 will still be very much COVID impacted. And I think Tom mentioned earlier, you know, we're setting up a distributed workforce for the foreseeable future. Can you paint a picture of what you're preparing for when you come back into work next year?
Yeah, and it is obviously a big question, Luke, that's playing out in real time for all of us, I think, as we speak, particularly as vaccines and other things start to roll out. It's already a bit of a cliche, I think, you know, COVID being the most effective chief digital officer that a lot of organizations have had over the past few years in terms of accelerating the change. Hopefully, you know, the good stuff endures, and there are some good things in there. We just got to pick the good from the things that you know, we want to uplift. We're certainly pushing hard on building out a bit of a confluence of new and alternate ways of working, supported by digital alongside new digital capabilities that we're bringing to market. And so by that, what I mean is, you know, our use of office space, how and when we use it, particularly around the collaborative element of that. There's some cultural pieces in there as well that we're considering. To the collaborative solutions we've touched on earlier, and that's both for our own staff, but also for project partners, you know, and other affiliates through the projects. Solutions that provide for things like more remote monitoring. Alan touched on some of these, remote sensing, additional levels of automation, moving people from the equation potentially, I think are all going to be part of, you know, if we want to use the hackneyed new normal kind of phrase. Predictive in nature, we're certainly looking at AI and ML techniques, particularly in the water space, simulation, digital twin, lots of buzzwords. But I think what we're trying to ensure is that we're tying that very clearly to the fact that client needs have shifted as much as our own, in some cases more so, and so that we're working alongside them to tackle the right kind of problems rather than just sort of throw a lot of technology at the issue, and that's the sort of basis of our digital strategy. On a more specific level, and perhaps more relevant to this forum, we've certainly seen and continue to see a lot of stimulus funding coming in for infrastructure. And I think for those of us who are wearing either a digital hat or aligned to that, it's incumbent upon us, I think, to ensure that factors such as digital are thought about upfront where possible, so we don't miss a trick down the line, particularly as you hand over into operations. But we're also looking at how digital can help better enable things like the social impact, the sustainability, and other environmental outcomes, as well as that both that stimulus money starts flowing and as new projects open up for next year, so that we don't miss an opportunity. It's got a grand opportunity, if you like, for all of us coming out of this pandemic.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Paul. Who else would like to comment on 2021 and beyond? Any of our panelists like to jump into that one?
I wouldn't mind commenting, Luke. Echoing what Paul said as well, I think the opportunity for better integration of paper and information is just incredible on very different fronts. I think one particular one that I'm working on, and talking about stats, I think last time I looked, there were 104 people got injured in Australia for work injuries, and a large segment of that was in the transport industry. I think a lot of injuries and work injuries come through critical decision making when you're on site, understanding what information you have available to you, how do you remain safe, and what are the conditions on site that you have to deal with, and then the decision making around that. And it's not just the decision making that happens just for the person on site, it's the decision making of the people above, as Doug highlighted. You know, what if those reports coming through? is it painting a picture for you in a particular situation, in a particular context that you have to respond to in a very prompt and adequate manner? I think that's where the paperless work site and that exchange of information and visibility of the problem and the issues and responding adequately. I think that's where I'd love to see us moving very fast and quick now that digital transformation has picked up. And it's an enormous opportunity for the industry to act on and prevent a whole lot of sadness, I guess, within the industry and the families that it impacts.
Yeah, certainly agree, Tom.
Yeah, Luke, I might just mention something. Doug talked about people first, and I think I've got a team of about 80 people distributed across Australia, New Zealand, and Manila, and employee engagement and keeping the team, connected is pretty vital as well. We put measures in place during COVID, which in some were sort of temporary, thinking we're going to come out the other side, but now we've got to start thinking about, what are our processes and policies that are now going to be permanent. And how do we adjust to that and making sure that everyone stays engaged, people are not sort of left out in the wilderness, and when they can come back to the office, we get the right sort of mix of those who may want to stay at home and those who may want to come back to the office and keep that engagement going. So that's pretty important for myself to make sure we get that level of productivity everyone's working at, which is massively, it's huge at the moment, to try and make that sustainable, because I think a lot of organizations that I hear, everyone's been working crazy hard this year, and what's the right balance?
Yeah, very well said, and it's an excellent segue into the question we've got from our audience, which is all about digital fatigue. I know I'm sitting here, in my bedroom at home, I've got a picture of waves on the wall just to remind me of what the ocean looks like, because I never leave home, other than, deciding to take my kids to school occasionally when I can deal with that. But the question of digital fatigue, let's finalize with that. So any panelists, you're finding that your people 6-9 months into this journey now, how are you dealing with the aspect of digital fatigue? Are there any things that you're putting in place to listen to that, so to pick it up, but also then to to respond to it as well?
I'll jump in. Oh.
You go.
Okay, well, I go. I find it a continuous learning experience. I think when I first started, it was about me going for a walk, having breaks, doing something, other activities in between, rather than sitting down, walking meetings. I've kind of evolved that a little bit. I'm finding that I'm integrating my kids when they're at home, particularly more in my my work environment as well. Sometimes they just watch and see what I do, or they grab me for 10 minutes and I'm doing the plank challenge, and various other things. So yes, I'm evolving and managing my digital fatigue. That's for sure. Continuous learning experience and learning from others as well. But I think ongoing challenge, I find it personally.
Yeah, excellent. Alan, are you going to add something before you wrap up?
Yeah, look, I was just going to say, one thing we're trying to do, I guess we're lucky here. I'm based in Brisbane, and the team have got back to the office and keeping some level of, physical connection with the team. And those that are in Melbourne and Sydney, who I can't go see anymore physically, is just trying to get that regular connection and not just talk about work. And I think that's important, just to sort of keep the human element across the team, because we do get, entrenched from, meeting to meeting without any break. And I think making sure we have those breaks in between, just, and not just yourselves. And I've been trying to get in the habit of, trying to make meetings start 5 minutes later and finish 5 minutes earlier, because we find that you don't even get that 5 minutes between meetings. And I think that's important to sort of show the team that's okay. We don't need to have to work every 30-minute blocks. We can take a bit of a break in between.
Yeah, look, certainly. And I think, look, I just want to really appreciate everyone today opening up and actually giving us some, tangible things that we can use, both what we're addressing now, what we're going on into the future as well. I've certainly taken a lot of notes, learned a lot. I hope our audience has as well. I would like to thank the panelists for joining. Not easy when you've got, 5 of you trying to buy for airtime. I do hope you've at least felt like you've had an adequate say in the content that we've delivered today. And just want to take the moment to say, look, we hope you all have a break coming up over Christmas and the new year. And we look forward to seeing you in 2021, where we try to get this crazy year off the ground. So yeah, please stay safe. Thank you again for joining our session and enjoy the rest of the week for Australia Build Week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
Thank you, Luke.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you to our panelists. Now I'd like to invite Colin Dominish, Australian Digital Leader from GHD Digital.
Well, a very good day to everyone, and I thank you all for joining for a discussion about digitally enabled operational readiness. Really what I'd like to talk about is a challenge that everyone is facing across the board at the moment, and that's just having too much data. Everywhere I go, every client that I'm talking to is talking about all of the data that they're collating and looking for ways in which that data might be able to provide value to what they're doing. In the construction world, there's all manner of data that you might be tracking: the weather, human movement on your sites, truck logistics, all manner of safety data, what's happening with the supply of equipment. It's just endless. And really, that data is only meaningful if you can gain some insight to be able to improve from it. So I'd like to talk a little bit about how digital is helping address this key issue and ways in which you can get more insight on your construction programs from using data in the right way. Firstly, it's important to know where that data is coming from. And whilst you might think a lot of the data resides in your computer systems, might be readily available on tablets, mobile phones, other devices, the truth of the matter is a lot of the data that we collect is still coming through old manual processes, whether that's form-based or whether it's extrapolated into an Excel spreadsheet or captured in some manner to be able to share with your team. The fact is a lot of the data still resides in the business processes that we undertake and continue to be very manual in the approach that's taken to collect it and to be able to visualize what that data is trying to tell us. So there's a real opportunity to make a shift digitally from taking your business processes from manual to automated, and by doing so, understand where a lot of the value of the data could be exposed to your teams. To do that, it's helpful to have some idea of how data flows within the organisation. And at GHD Digital, we use a model to be able to depict where your data might sit, whether or not it's raw data that's coming straight out of the field and off your construction site or off the people working on it, to a point where it's turned into intelligence and you've been able to optimize that data for good effect, to really be able to get real clear data that you can use to model what's happening across your construction program and then be able to predict what's going to happen next takes quite a bit of thinking. And at the bottom of this slide, you can see a framework that GHD Digital used to try and work through what that approach might look like. And that's a defined process that you can define for your organisation to understand that data flow, to understand the governance around it, and to be able to really understand how much benefit you're getting from that data. Is it something that's just used to report on? Are you modelling what's happening day in, day out on your sites? Or are you starting to predict and optimise your construction process through the data that you're capturing? With that framework comes a whole lot of questions to underlie where the value of your data sits. In each of those phases that were along the bottom of that last slide, there are key questions to ask to unpack whether or not data is going to be valuable throughout the process. So I won't talk to all the questions that are on the slide here, but it's great to work through what all your data sources are, be able to define how you're going to use them through that framework, what the output's going to be in terms of that intelligence from the data, and indeed whether some of the data that you're getting isn't actually relevant at all to your purposes. A lot of this tends to be called out by way of an asset data strategy. Some organisations call it a data policy, might be referred to as data governance. Having a mechanism for understanding the flow of data throughout your organisation, what you're going to use it for by way of decision making, and how you're going to be able to take advantage of it to get that intelligence and optimisation happening. A lot of organisations have done some good work to create those strategies and policies and governance. It's a bigger task to be able to really effectively implement them, to be able to get the outcomes that you're seeking. And I know, just working with a number of our clients, the ability to turn that data into intelligence remains such a difficult task, particularly if a lot of the data you're collecting is manual. So certainly a question for the audience today: where are you up to as an organisation in terms of setting an asset management policy that's reflective of your business plans, that takes you through an understanding of what's strategic around the data that you're collecting, and helps you to understand how that data fits within the decision-making process so that you can get the right data to the right people at the right time. That's what's going to drive intelligence and optimization across your work sites. This is how a typical life cycle might look of an asset throughout its lifetime. You'll start with having a purchase decision or a design decision, whether it's a brownfields or a greenfields asset, and there will be data required to make some of those decisions, and plenty of data crunching to work out what's going to be economically viable, socially viable, environmentally viable for your project. Then you'll start the task of living with that asset and being able to perform tasks operationally. Apologies, my screen is flicking around there, and I don't know why. So you'll see benefits realised throughout. Just move back to that slide, I do apologise. You'll see benefits of the cost of the asset being far outweighed by the realised value of the asset, being able to really understand what it is that that asset is delivering for you, for your community, etc. And to fully realise that value, it's just imperative that you're getting the data that you need to be able to fully understand the value being created. Just pause for a second to check that that slideshow is showing correctly. There we are. So there's still an on-flow of data beyond the operation and maintenance that can really help reflect upon how you might decommission your assets at end of lifetime, and what you might do to refurbish, replace, or reuse that asset into the future. The data is important to maintain to make decisions about what the next asset might be within your infrastructure lifecycle. If you're in the construction phase and only focusing around building the asset, there's a lot of data that can be collected across this lifecycle that you can hand on at the end of construction to inform that operations task. And more so, we're seeing the use of BIM, digital engineering, and indeed the digital twin being ways to reflect upon how an asset might be built and constructed and how that asset's going to look throughout the rest of its lifetime. So digital twins are becoming more and more the way in which we can work to understand how data can make a difference to the asset across the entire life cycle. And yet what we see traditionally is this sawtooth effect, where you get to the end of design and there's no data handover. You procure what's required to build the solution, and then there's no data handover. You go and build the asset and there's no data handover. And then whoever has to manage that asset for the next 30 to 100 years has no data upon which to derive their efficiencies going forward. So there's a waste built into the life cycle on those handovers if the right data isn't captured and identified right at the design phase. This is where digital twins are becoming really important to understand what that data might be that needs to get collected up front and how the digital twin might evolve throughout the asset lifecycle so that you've got the right data to help you all the way through to decommissioning your asset. Lots of benefits that flow from that if you get it right. So what is a digital twin? Well, if you think quickly of what a digital twin is for you personally, if you've got a Fitbit on your wrist, then that Fitbit's acting as a digital thread that links everything that's happening to you physiologically and being recorded as data back into a digital model of yourself that you might see on your Apple Watch, your Fitbit, or you might download onto your computer. So that's one example of a digital twin that you might be using right at this minute. Cars, we're certainly seeing a lot done here to map out a digital twin of the road network and where your car might sit within it through the use of voice vehicle-to-vehicle communications, vehicle back-to-command communications. And if you're lucky enough to own a Tesla Roadster, then you will know there's a whole lot of data going back to Tesla's factory to provide a digital twin of how your car's operating on the road today. In fact, you can start the car, you can get maintenance data, you can do all manner of things from that digital twin back to your physical car out on the road. In infrastructure, the use of extended reality is helping us to understand what the digital twin might look like for infrastructure. In this specific example, just sharing what our team did on Mittagong Station, which is in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales, where we built a digital twin to visualise upgrades that were happening through the Transport for New South Wales TAP program. That digital twin extended to the utilities that were being upgraded on the project, all of the materials that were going to be used for construction, and gave stakeholders a really good sense of what the finished product would look like before we rolled it out. That's still being used now through modular design elements to consider what we might do on the next set of stations that we're currently designing. And you can now get digital twins of cities. So in this example, I'm just sharing what Dassault Systems have done with their 3D Experience City product for Singapore. Singapore famously has a digital twin now of the entire city-state, and it keeps on being built out day by day. And here in Sydney, where I'm presenting from, we of course have the New South Wales digital twin being developed by the New South Wales government with a particular emphasis on Western Sydney. So one of the world first implementations of digital twins by a state government. Very exciting to see. So digital twins are here today to help us already just understand what data we need to collect right throughout the asset lifecycle. There's many ways that you might go and find information to compile into your digital twin. And just listing on the screen there a number of different things that feed into it. But I would say that this is changing rapidly, and every couple of months there's a new way that you might collect the data that's going to turn into intelligence that will make up your digital twin. So we need to be very flexible and allow for the pace of change that is occurring across the construction industry to be able to get those data sets that will feed into a digital twin. When do the digital twins apply? Well, I've mentioned it's right across the life cycle, but I feel that where people are going to get most benefit is connecting better with customers to understand how to improve the service that you can create from those new assets being built. Safety on site is a massive one. Being able to optimize the use of that asset throughout its life cycle and improve efficiencies. And for your workforce, helping them really become more innovative and resilient and being able to understand what the asset's going to look like through planning, design, construction, operations, and giving them a greater sense of their role to play in the life cycle of that asset. So making your team future ready for that asset over time. Where do they apply? Well, we're seeing instances right across all of the industries that GHD supports, and really there's no limit to where they can be seen. The water industry has been using them for many, many years. Energy and resources are building out their views of networks at the moment, and a lot happening around distributed energy in that regard. The use of digital twins now to tie into your building management systems for property is getting to the extent where buildings are talking to each other, and indeed starting to show a digital twin of an entire precinct. The use of environmental data to be able to inform where you might have issues such as coastal erosion, climate change, etc., is becoming more and more important. And in transportation, you can now map out your whole transport network and understand what's happening day in, day out across that network to be able to maximise concept of operations and get better efficiency within that network despite incidents that might occur across it. So many different use cases. This is the GHD digital representation of what we think happens within a digital twin. And I'd say it's multi-layered. Digital twin can mean many different things to many different people, and they can act at very different levels. You might just want to monitor what's happening out on site and simply create something that tells you what's going on right now, today. You may want to improve your performance and efficiency in operations and build a digital twin that's going to allow you to measure that performance. You might want to get predictive and understand what's going to happen in the future on your sites. Or you might even want to move to an autonomous site, like many of the mine sites across Australia, where you can now control things autonomously. In fact, you can hand over control to allow for the digital twin to make decisions about what happens in operations day in, day out. So digital twins, how do you get there? Well, start with a gap analysis and a bit of a roadmap on what you're going to do to plan the use of a digital twin. Develop some use cases that are going to add value. Start with your existing assets. It's easier to build up a data set and map out a digital twin for assets that you already have within your infrastructure portfolio than try and do it on a new build. And then validate the data handover at every step of the life cycle to see how you might improve it based on different people using that data across your organisation. So key takeaways from today's session. Firstly, realise the value of your data. There are amazing things you can do with your data if you take it from being just raw data and turning it into intelligence. Plan and coordinate the collection of that data using a data strategy or a data policy, something that defines how that's going to work within your organisation so that everyone understands how data will flow and how it'll be used to make decisions. Provide a digital twin to your team and to your stakeholders so that they can get a good sense of how that data is being used and how you can use it for greater good over time. And your greatest opportunity is in building out that digital twin across the whole infrastructure asset lifecycle. With that, conclude the presentation. If there are any questions from the audience, happy to take them with the time remaining. All right, I'm seeing one here. Any examples of recording and analysing user patterns, foot traffic flows, etc. within buildings and spaces to inform future planning decisions? You know, GHD has a whole team based on looking at that. The team's called Movement Strategies, and they spend their lives looking at how people and traffic and anything else that moves flows within an infrastructure environment. It could be a hospital, it could be a school, it could be indeed a construction site. And they analyse not just what's happening today, but they predict what might happen into the future. So yes, that's something that we're doing a lot of, and there's many case examples that we can provide around that. If you'd like to contact me outside of the discussion today, I'd be delighted to share with you some case studies. Well, I think we're at time, and I think that was the only question coming through. So I really do thank you all very much for your time today.
In the past, there was a strong sense of construction being allergic to technology and not wanting to embrace it. The times are changing.
ADCO works on all types of projects, so we'll do hospitals, private and public, we'll do schools,
Commercial, retail, community. We've built over 3,500 projects, and over time, ADCO's built a reputation to show that we're one of the most established builders. We had 40 file servers across 4 states, and we're at a crossroads where we had to do something. We had a huge appetite for cloud because we knew the benefits of it, and we trialled Dropbox on 2 projects. The feedback from those 2 projects was unanimous. The reason we chose Dropbox was more from how intuitive it was.
My IT skills are less than satisfactory. I'm old school and I still do a lot of it the old school way, but when I first used Dropbox, it was easy. It was just easy.
Software that we're already using, Dropbox had aligned itself with, and there was integrations available. What we realised was Dropbox had a huge interest in construction. Never before has ADCO been able to access their project working documents on mobile devices and on tablet devices.
Now I can access minutes or drawings or any document from home or from the airport or wherever I happen to be, so that's been of a huge benefit.
We can use the files out on site, we can look at photos from other jobs, we can share it around, I can look up scope of work so I can see what contracts are coming up, right click it, share it, and then it flicks it to them and it acknowledges when they've looked at it.
If a drawing or a document is on Dropbox, we know the documentation's accurate and up to date. When all the costs are on the builder, missing a couple of documents can be the difference between, I guess, a profitable project and one that's not so good.
If you're going to set up a new construction company today, all this stuff would just be the norm. It's just the way things are done.
It's been great. We're seeing a lot more success in our tendering in terms of getting things right. So we do see Dropbox as a key part of managing the important document transmittals on a project.
I feel super proud of the fact that we've made a difference. It's been worth every penny, so a solution like this just makes sense. It was a no-brainer.
That's the end of the session. Thank you very much to all of our speakers, our sponsors, and a big thank you to everyone who has joined us in the audience today. You will each receive an email with a link to an on-demand copy of today's session. This is normally sent within 48 hours. Please tune in for other sessions that are available both live and demand this week. From the 7th to the 11th of December, we have sessions running in both the morning and in the afternoon. You can log into the event platform and plan your agenda and add them to My Event Planner to create a customized plan for your week. You can also click on the sponsors, message them, and set up meetings with attendees, speakers, and sponsors. We do hope you enjoyed this webinar and very much looking forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you.